should come up with a thing. Yes, you're recording. Can you see that as well?
Yeah.
Make sure you let everyone know. Okay, so what we're going to do tonight, we're going to look at learning outcome 2, which is about management and leadership theories. And you know what? You'll relate to these because you'll, even if you're not used to what they're called, you'll recognise the people. It's almost like sort of characters in a film or something. So the first bit that we're going to look at is the difference between management and leadership. And on this, I've got so many checklists and so many slides, there's so much that I've put down for you to help you with this. And you've only got, word count wise, I'm sure it's still quite short. It's always about, tends to be about 385, doesn't it, each? So let's have a look. Okay. Yeah, so we're looking at management leadership, we're looking at different styles, and we're looking at culture, values, management style, how they all fit together. And we're looking at how you adapt the style depending on what happens. Okay. So what do you reckon the difference is? I'm going to get my slides in a second, but just before we start that, what's the difference between a manager and a leader?
I always define myself as a leader and not as a manager.
And
to
why
people
is that,
on the shop
Ashley?
floor,
Do
because
you like a bit more power?
No, because as a manager, I think managers a bit draconian. As a leader, you're leading people in the right direction, where you expect them to go. You know what I mean?
So we've got a bit of a vision then, I suppose, with that we don't have with management. So what's negative about management then?
I just think manager is very authoritative, isn't it?
I hadn't really thought of it like that, but I agree with you. I see what you say. Manager is like you're scrutinising them, isn't it? You're on their back. And leader is like taking them forward, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the way I see it.
Yeah, so that's the way you see it. Okay, that's really interesting. What about you, Zubair? What do you think?
I think management is all about strategy, following a plan and guide the process into a structured manner, whereas leadership is more personality and lead by example, these kind of things.
Yep. Absolutely. And yeah, so that you've got in essence the key difference between the two. And what I'll do is I'll bring my slides up, so I'll share my screen. Just let me do that, and we'll go through the contents on this, because yeah, you've got it already. It's just a case of if we can use some sources in there as well to support it. Let me just do the slideshow. Okay. So yeah, so we've got, let's go through. Do you think, sorry, I'm just going to continue asking you a little bit more. Do you think managers and leaders are used, do you think the language is used incorrectly sometimes?
Yeah, I just think, I don't know, maybe it's just the way I look at it. I see manager to be quite, although my role is a manager, it's, like I said, a bit draconian. And whereas being a leader, you same as what Zubair said, you're expected to lead people forwards and lead the way. Do you know what I mean?
There's a dynamic that's different. It's interesting how team leaders are called leaders, aren't they? Really. So one of the things that I think comes with a leader that doesn't necessarily come with a manager is a leader has a bit more power. And actually, if you think about a team leader, they probably have no power.
Yeah.
So I think there is a sort of, in terms of like, if we were going to be really purist about what the terminology is, I think you're using the words for the right reason in a way that actually, if they were properly defined, might not be exactly right, but are right for the audience, if that makes sense. So you can say that in your when you're sort of talking about it, you can say actually the definitions of this, but in my role, this is why I call myself this, and that would work really well. So I think, Zubair, you put this really well as well about a manager sort of takes things forward. Operational, basically, they make stuff happen. They get told what to do by the leader, and then they make it happen.
Yes.
So they are almost in our hierarchy. They're not at the bottom, but they are not at the top. they're neither up nor down. They're sort of somewhere in the middle levels, aren't they?
Yeah, agree.
And
Gotta have a certain format they have to follow and get on.
Yeah. I also think if I look at my slides, if I look at the bottom of them, let me just try and open it up in a different way because I want to show you something that might be helpful. Yeah, see at the bottom of the slides, can you see my notes page? Can you see?
It's really small, that is.
Yeah, and you don't have to because you've got the slides. Can you see it a bit bigger now?
Yeah.
I've got a Forbes article and it actually defines the difference. So you might want to use that. So what I'm just saying is on the slides, just have a look because that could be quite helpful to you. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Back to my slideshow. So when I was doing this last year, this module, something had happened in the news, and it was the leader of Tesco's was just stepping down, and he'd been a leader, he'd led it for 5 years, and there was somewhere else at the same time that it was someone else was stepping down, and it was 5 years. Ashley, has someone at the top of JLR stepped down as well very recently?
Yeah, so to our executive director of HR, who was in the business for 35 years, and our CEO has just finished 2 weeks ago.
And how long was the CEO for?
10 years.
10 years, so it's longer than the 5 years. And then what about 35 years for the HR one?
Yeah.
Are they just retiring?
Retiring, yeah. I think it's probably a jump before they were pushed, maybe.
Well, yeah, because they're not specific to your area, are they? So they're in the business that's not doing very well. Why do you think, right, when you start getting really senior positions, if that's something you decide to do, they don't last very long. Like, as in people, you don't tend to have sort of 20 or 30 years somewhere. You tend to be there for a shortish period. Why do you think those levels are so sort of precarious? Why do you think that? Yeah, why do you think that happens?
Constant change, constant progression for the business and the individual.
And maybe sometimes they're not the right fit for it.
Yeah.
And sometimes you've got to bring in a new culture. And actually, the CEO who's just left, were they seen as quite a good guy?
Oh yeah, he's a professor, a sir. He's got every letter and ticket behind his name now.
And then the person who's come in to do it, what do we know about them?
Recently sacked from Renault as a CEO.
Oh, that's nice. And what's their style?
Well, he's only been CEO of 2 companies. One of them, which was a supplier into JLR, and the other one being Renault. And he was there for 9 months and was ousted by the executive board for having a fallout with the CEO of Nissan.
Okay. Oh, that's a very interesting choice, isn't it?
All that's on the internet. You can find all that if you go looking.
Wow. Okay. So, what changes are you expecting to see him to make?
I think first point of call is, I think with anybody new into a role like that, is where can you cut costs?
I think he's there I think he's there to really shake things up and not be seen as the good guy.
Yeah, that's the sort of mindset around the business at the minute. You know, our old CEO is knighted by the Queen, seen as this guy that's done brilliant for JLR.
Yeah.
Is this guy now the fool guy that comes in and starts shopping left, right, and centre?
Yeah. And I this is what I think. Sort of, if you're paid like hundreds of thousands of pounds a year, don't expect to keep your job that long. Because if something goes wrong that's outside of your control as well, you will get blamed or brought in to change it. That must be really stressful, mustn't it, really, to do that?
Well, our CEO said for the last 10 years, all he's done is live and breathe JLR. It's been his life.
Yeah.
There's been no outside of JLR. It's just been JLR. And you could imagine it, couldn't you? Your life would just be work, wouldn't it? 24/7.
Well, let's face facts. Yours isn't too far off at the moment, is it? And you're not there.
I'm on a few $100,000 a year less than him.
Yeah, exactly. So I just think, but you would at that level, you would expect like that's what you'd expect of it, isn't it?
Yeah,
And the JLR culture is quite unforgiving, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got this idea with a leader that they've got they're inspirational actually, and when you move on to the top-up degree, you'll do this time next year. You'll be doing a strategic leadership module, which is the one that I'm delivering at the moment. And the session I'm doing on Saturday is about have you heard of this idea of sort of transformational leaders or inspirational leaders? And but actually, the other one they call them is charismatic leaders. And there's a great deal of sort of research on them, and actually they're not always very effective, because people seem to think that if you like, do you think you have to like the person that you work for?
I think it helps if you do. I think if you don't like the person that you work for, I think it makes it harder to work for somebody if you don't get on with them, or you don't necessarily like them or respect them, I suppose.
I think it's key is respect, because you might not like them or their personal style, but actually if they get things done and you've got trust in them, is probably another. Zubair, what do you think? Do you think you need to like the people you work for?
Not necessarily, but I believe you have to have certain kind of respect, like Adrian says, to make it work. So yeah, that's important.
Okay.
Because personality is something else. You might like it or you might not like it, but as far as it's not professional field, so that's a different thing. So I think there needs to be a limit. If you're a leader, what you can expose about yourself. Limit business and that.
Yeah, and some of it will be personal style, and you don't have to exactly be friends, but as long as they do a good, as long as you I think there's a trust and there's a sort of feeling that you feel a bit motivated by them as well. You can see why people start their own business, can't you? Because even if they're not actually leading anyone, at least they feel they've got some control over their lives, which is where they become a leader, but haven't necessarily got a direct workforce, but just enjoy that vision and sort of deciding what they want to do, how they want to do it. And you're still working with suppliers and things, whatever you do. So you can see how that could be a way of becoming a leader without necessarily years and years of experience.
That's what I'm constantly thinking about.
Oh, you've been thinking of that, yeah.
Because I'm thinking about the amount of effort I put every day into somebody else's organization. If I still input this type of aggression and effort into my thing, it'll be much better rewarded at the end. So it's all about setting it up at the beginning.
Yeah, but that's the deal breaker, because it's risk and reward.
I was just about to say that, risk and reward.
Thank you. It is, because the thing is, and that's why the better rewarded you are in your full-time position, which is why I think it's a dangerous position, say, for Ashley to be in, because actually to set up your own business and to ever properly jump ship, you're going to have some good contracts in to make it worth doing. And getting those off the ground. It's just, you're right, you can do everything right though for your own business, and for some reason it could be market factors, there's all sorts of things. It's just right idea, right time, getting a momentum behind it, absolutely, and you have control over your life, but you still work for your customers. So in some ways, like I would keep my like. It sounds like I probably have I don't have my I wouldn't answer if someone called me at 1 o'clock about their assignment or anything. But certainly, I'm very quick on response times, because you're all my customers, and I am self-employed. So there's a different. Do you know what I mean? So there's still a pressure there. I think people feel like it if you run your own business, it goes in some ways, but it doesn't. It just changes.
Yeah, different type of pressure, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess the thing that keeps you going is the motivation that you get from your own business. It keeps you going. You know the long-term vision about it. So every day you wake up, so that drives it.
It does. You have to be totally in on the market and know what's changing and what you do. Like what I did when I started in 2000, it was like 2005. Basically, no, it was earlier than that. I've sort of been running my own business for over 20 years, but it's very, very different what I do now to what I used to do, and it will be different in the future. You've just got to be very agile. And it takes about 7 or 8 years, I think, to get relaxed with the fact your income goes up and down. and to feel like it's going to be all right because you've got enough contacts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's quite a, do you know what, you've got to be really, I think, ballsy to do it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and but when it works, it can really give you a nice, enjoyable lifestyle to the point that you can say no to things you just don't want to do, and that there's something in that is so liberating. And I'm conscious this has been recorded, but one of my rules for my business is I don't work for wankers. So if I think someone's not very nice, I won't take them on as a client. Because you've got enough clients. And, you know, that is such a privileged position to be
They
in.
might come back and bite you in the future. You have them now, but yeah.
You can tell, you know, why would you? If you actually choose who you're going to work with, why would you work with for people that make you feel uncomfortable?
Yeah.
So we've got, in terms of the relationship between management and leadership, with that one, look at the definitions. This is really straightforward. The definitions between the two, and then talk about what your role is and what positions that you see, and actually but you could even talk about what you like to see in a manager or a leader, or you know, and just because I think that, yeah, as you say, the language is a bit of a sort of gives us a sense of what our expectations are. So in terms of how we feel, or how our teams and individuals feel according to different leaders, different managers and leadership style, I'm just going to talk you through a couple of different ones here. So there's this grid, and some are where people are very bothered about the team. Others are where they're very, very bothered about the task. So if they're really bothered about task, they just want you to get on with it. So they're in that authority compliance management. So they're really, really keen. You just get stuff done, you do it properly. And actually, if you're, I don't know if you've seen sort of footage where people are working in Apple factories in China and they're falling asleep, they're so tired. That would be authority compliance management. They don't care. As long as you do what you need to do, that's all that matters. And then, but then we've also got people who are bothered about their team. And I imagine, actually, you're like this, where you've got to get stuff done, but actually the guys know that you will look out for them.
Oh yeah, I do, and they know that as well.
Yeah. So you've got a high concern for people, you've got a high concern for production, because that's driven from the organisation. You could not be in your role and not have that, otherwise you wouldn't have progressed to the level you have. So you've got that. And then, so that's sort of almost like the optimum position, this team management, where and ideally you've got a team that get on great as well. Then I have worked in the past for someone who's, I call like a country club manager, and he was really nice, and he was always very bothered about how is the family, how are you, etc., etc. But he'd almost, if people didn't feel very well, he'd go, oh, do you know what, just go home, or if you haven't got anything to do, just go home. And actually, although the reason he did all that, he wanted to be seen as the good guy. That's how he saw himself, as a man of the people. Okay, the result of it, there was people just took the mickey because they could. You know, if they weren't feeling great, they'd tell him they hadn't got any work to do. He'd be very, very sympathetic. But actually, we didn't have the results we should have done in that. And also, from my point of view, I didn't like it, because when he's asking me, how's the family, or how's this, that, and the other, he's not my friend. And I don't mean that in a horrible way, but actually, I'm there to do a job. So I found it a bit strange that he was almost seemed so interested in stuff that I wasn't particularly interested in. You know, it just seemed weird anyway. And then you've got people who are really, really not bothered about production or people. So they basically, I think they're the ones that are about to retire, and for some reason the organisation can't get rid of them. You know, the ones that are just like, it's not my problem. Well, yeah, you've got targets, so what? It'll cost them so much to get me out. And they're sort of, they've checked out, but they're still in a management position.
Yeah.
They're blocking its space.
Yeah. And especially if you've got a tall hierarchy, they really are as well.
Yeah.
And they'll be so demotivational. And then you've got somewhere in the middle, you've got the people that sort of get things done, that flex a bit when they have to, in terms of like things are going on with the team, push a bit when they have to, when more things need doing work-wise. So they're the sort of middle of the road. I've sort of guessed where I think you'd be at. Do you agree, Ashley? Do you think you are at team management?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I do.
Okay.
But I think when I first went into management, I was probably authority compliance management in my first role at Solihull, because Solihull is very target driven and it's
Yep.
very, very demanding, and there's no prisoners whatsoever.
Yeah.
Whereas this part of the business where I'm at now, it's about targets, but the senior leaders in this end of the business are completely different people to what they are in the Solihull side of the business. So me and Aid both report into somebody who then reports into one guy. So ultimately we come under one guy, and he probably is a country club manager.
Oh, okay.
Whereas the guy that was in the box before him was probably an authority compliance manager. He was very
Okay.
strict and bang, bang, this is what's expected. The other guy, if you haven't really got the answer for it, it's sort of like, okay, there's no challenging.
Okay, that's interesting, because I wonder if that doesn't matter so much when you're away from the shop floor. I wonder if there are different roles at different levels, and actually maybe it's more about networking and about, I don't know, you still got to put the pressure on though, haven't you?
Yeah.
Okay.
But all of them boxes, I know people that fit in every single one of them.
Yeah, it is. This is what I'm. This is stuff that actually you might not have heard before, but you know the people. Yeah. I on the authority compliance management, I think I'm quite bullish in terms of getting stuff done. I'm nice to the people who do work for me, but I'm not their mates. I don't want to, I don't. But I am. They're like subcontracted, so that's what the relationship has to be, I think. But there should be enough give and take, shouldn't there, for it to mean that if they do have a problem, because otherwise you lose goodwill, don't you?
Yeah.
Sue Bear, where are you on this?
I report to a guy who's the impoverished management minimum effort required to be in the organization.
Oh wow, okay.
This guy reports to the authority compliance management, which is a brand new person that joined the business last April. So he's very motivated. He wants to get jobs done, and he wants to do it now. But his attitude is very bullish. Whenever there's a problem, he's like, "Oh, let's sort it." But who will sort it? He doesn't really say it. He just say sort it, And then so I'm kind of stuck between the two, because the authority manager will always come down to me like, has this been done? Has this been done? When is it going to be done?
Yeah.
Like, I need the support. So this other guy, the other manager, the impoverished one, needs to do some kind of stuff to enhance this, but it doesn't quite happen in that section. So that's where I get left behind.
So I think this is really interesting, because on this as well, we want to think about how the teams and individuals feel. So team management, hopefully they feel like they're accomplishing a lot and they're part of a team that really make things happen, and they enjoy working together. So there's a massive sense of satisfaction. Under the authority or compliance management, what do you think people feel there?
Probably a bit of fear.
Bullied, I was going to say, potentially, don't they? They've got to do it, and they don't necessarily want to do it. But do you know what? In terms of results, they might still get good results.
Yeah.
But they're off stressed, they're off sick, and actually they're counting down their retirement days. How do you think they feel under, because this is you, Zubair, how do you feel under impoverished management?
I feel let down. I feel I have to do more work, but not getting paid to what I'm doing, whereas somebody is getting paid and not doing their job.
That's actually a very, very good point, isn't it? Because you're almost protecting them, and that's just not fair as well. So there's a level of feeling like that.
Yeah, that's how I feel.
And then I mentioned how I felt about under a country club management. How would you feel under that sort of style?
I would feel at some point like, yes, like you say, people will take advantage of this, or they will expect it to be common occurrences because they know they can do it, and you will get too much. Yeah.
And I think there's a risk that work can become a bit of a jolly, and so people start leaving a little bit earlier. It just starts getting a bit more relaxed, and then if it does change, people are really fed up. But actually, it's just what it should have always been.
Yes.
Okay. So that by the sounds of it, you can relate to all of that, can't you?
Yeah.
Both of you. Okay, good. So we've got some more leadership styles here. We've got the autocratic one. And this is where they are very prescriptive in terms of how things are done. But they don't necessarily share a huge amount of information. So they're not trying to get you to buy into it. They're just trying to get you to do it. So they're saying, look, so-and-so is going to do this, and how it's going to be done. As I say, it's not like where it's leading, it's just what you need to do now. They don't tend to give a lot of praise, but they sort of stay, they're detached actually from the group. So they're not one of the team, but they're in there to make stuff happen. Democratic, they're a bit like, well, how do you think this should be done? We discuss things, we encourage decisions as a group, and they act more as part of the team. And actually, these are the ones I can imagine. You know, Freddie at Aldi. I know he's the store manager, but I imagine he's a little bit like this, that he'd just muck in.
Yeah.
And actually, that he'd be very fair in what he did, and he'd listen to people. So I can't imagine him being autocratic unless he absolutely had to be. So yeah, so they muck in there. And then the laissez-faire ones, the hands-off. I like these ones. I know it's not everyone's style. And one of my managers, not Bargent, but there's another one, he's like this. He trusts us to get on with it. But he does give little bits of feedback, but not very much, but enough to make you sort of feel like you're doing okay. But these are the, if you don't like being managed, if that makes sense, if you like having a manager that doesn't manage you, this one really works really well, because you're just allowed almost a bit of a free rein. But it's not so great if you're not getting any feedback, because you just feel like you don't know if you're doing the right thing, if that makes sense. So we've got those extremes, and then there's this idea here that actually there's this continuum. So by that I mean, like, there's a scale that you go up or down. So we've got at the very firm end, the tell end, this is where they're autocratic. So basically, this is what we've got to do, and this is when we've got to do it by, and you're going to get on with it. Then we've got the ones which are a little bit more about the people and sort of like say, and these are the reasons why. So you've still got to get on with it, but they give a bit more background, treat you more like a human, not just a number. Then we've got the sort of further in, we've got where they're actually asking you what you feel about it, what you think about it. So this might be if they're launching a new initiative at work and they want to try and get some level of buy-in. So it's still going to happen. We know it's going to happen, but at least they're listening to any concerns. So that might be just before you started at CU Coventry, we moved. So we moved from a building that was more in the centre of the city, that was quite old, it was like a 1960s building, to this purpose-built building. And actually they did invite questions, they did ask feedback, but ultimately that wasn't going to change the fact we were moving. Does that make sense? They were just trying to get people to have a little bit of ownership over it.
Yeah.
It was interesting at the time though, they didn't mention the fact there weren't going to be any rooms, because, like, you know, in the area that we went in, we were studying in, and there's no walls.
Yeah.
that was something they didn't really you know, when they were doing tours around, everyone would have thought, you know, the walls are coming, wouldn't they? not the fact they weren't going to bother with any. Don't think it's quite as much of an issue now. And we go right to the other extreme, which is where like the team basically run the business, if you like, you know. So where they within limits, they're allowed to say what they want. So that sort of goes, it flexes up and down. Right, in what scenario might we say, just do it? What sort of situation can you think of where we just have to say, you've just got to get on with it?
I do that sometimes, and it might be where a task has to be done. It's going to be challenging. We might not have the answer, but we've got to bed together, and I do use a line, we've just got to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. It may be because there's a deadline. It might be because there's lots of other factors and all the work pressures you've got. It might be a legal thing. It might be sometimes that we can't share the reasons why, because actually we're in such a bad position that we don't want to tell anyone why, but we just got to trust me and just get on with it. Now, if it's something where we've got a bit more planning time, we might sort of, and it's going to, we know there might be a bit of a backlash. It might be more about trying to explain why we're going to do what we sorry. So if we've got the introduction of GDPR, we might be doing a bit of training on it. We're explaining why things, process is going to change. It might be a new IT system that's implemented, like Aula. I know you're not using it yet, but actually a lot of research went into why they were doing it, and the customer satisfaction from students is really high on it. So they've sort of sold it, but we haven't got a choice, but they've sort of explained why they're doing it. Just one second, I'm so sorry. In what scenario can you imagine where a manager presents and invites questions? So what sort of scenario have you seen at work where that happens?
Where they need your knowledge, so they can make the right decisions.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I remember when we was outsourcing the press shop, we did a SWOT analysis workshop where we was just collecting information. The brand new manager, the supply chain manager, like he came in and he organizes this workshop, and we had to go to a different center as well for a day to do that. And yeah, we're collecting all these datas to find out what will be the best course of action to do in terms of which suppliers to choose, why, and which locations and that. So yeah, they do that to gather the information so it guides them in their decision making, I suppose.
I think so, Bear. I think you're further down the line there. I think you're on number 5, where the manager presents a problem and gets suggestions.
Okay, where was you at?
I was at number 3. Number 3, I think, is like in it's like the town hall potentially, if they do allow any questions.
Yeah, we have that.
Yeah, so that's what I was saying. So number 3 is where really we don't want any questions. Where you don't actually want anyone to ask anything, but you want to give the impression that you care.
Yeah.
This is happening. Has anyone got any questions? And you look around and see lots of hands and go, no one has. Let's just crack on with this then. So it's it's almost superficially looking like you're giving a little bit of like getting a bit of feedback. But I think, yeah, super, you're a little bit further down where you're sort of really inviting them in.
Okay.
Number 5 right in the middle is quite interesting because we're not really asking them for a lot of information. We're sharing something with them, but we're also saying, look, this isn't necessarily the way we're going. We just want to present it as an option at this point. So you're sowing the seed, which is quite important if it's a big change, that you give people enough notice. But it also presents quite a lot of uncertainty if it might change, mightn't it? You have to be so careful, don't you, as a manager, for saying things if there's any chance of it changing.
Yeah.
It's really tricky, isn't it, Ashley? This was what came up on Saturday. I think this is what David Stacey was almost sort of saying. The guys are saying lower down, like, you should share as much information as you can with people, keep them as informed as possible. But like at your level, if you're party to information that could really, really mess people up, like their careers or things, I don't think you necessarily want to share it until you know it's absolutely certain you've got to act on it.
It's not just that. We get information that if it goes to the shop floor, it can cause a bit of panic.
Yeah, of course.
So little things where we might see drop in volumes, and for me, I see that day in, day out where volumes fluctuate. But I could just say to somebody, "Oh, it's a drop in volume on Wednesday." Before you know it, everybody's panicking.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on, the volumes have dropped. What's going to happen? So you have to be careful about what you share, even just for nothing that's malicious. You've got to be careful. You know what I mean?
You've got to be very, very guarded, haven't you, in what you do? So I think as we get sort of further down this, I like this idea of almost like the challenge you've got is inviting participation and then doing nothing with it, and that's wrong, because actually it's like, what's the point? You're asking me what I think, and then you're telling me when I tell you you can't do anything with it. So you're better off towards the sort of end of this, where we're asking people, we're saying, look, we're moving to these new offices, like at Mile Lane. We're going to have a staff area. What are your suggestions in terms of what you'd like in the staff area? We haven't got a massive budget. We've got a budget of X, but if you've got any ideas. So you're giving some parameters there, aren't you? And then within that, you could then allow them even more definition in terms of what they're going to do within that. So do you think, because I think that's quite helpful. I'm sure it's really old, but I still think it works, doesn't it?
Mm.
The reason I like it is because I think we have got our preference in terms of our style, whether we're task or person. That's ultimately what it is. But there are certain times where even if we're really a real person, people manager, we've still just got to get people to get on with stuff, aren't there?
Yeah, yeah.
So part of it's context. So that's where this comes in.
There is times where I have to be, like you said, the compliance guy. I do sometimes have to be like that with certain individuals, but only on a very rarity. But some people will only respond to being managed like that, though. Some
Yeah.
people don't respond to, trying to be friendly with people and giving the reason why we want to do stuff because of X, Y, Z. Some people just want to be told black and white. You
Yeah,
are
they
doing
don't
this.
necessarily. I'm not interested in the background. Just tell me I'm here to work. Tell me what I need to do. That's what they want to know.
That's how I prefer to be managed as well. I prefer to be managed by a compliance person. I'd
Oh,
rather just
yeah.
be. That's what you got to do. Go and do it. Okay, I'll sort it.
Yeah. And there's a feeling there that actually they're quite straight up, because at least you know where you stand.
Yeah, yeah.
You're not the only one who said that. And when I did this the first time round, George was saying that. He said he had a people manager and he didn't like it very much. He said he had an authoritarian one, and he said he actually respected them a lot more. So there's this idea with management as well that we need to sort of bear in mind. We've got what needs doing. Some people, that I think the challenge you've got on this is some people have a lot of social needs from work, and some people don't, do they? So like I've got things outside of work which just mean that I've got my social needs met, so I don't need work to be my social life as well. But for some people, if it's just about the task, it's not why they go to work. They're like the informal bit, the sort of bit of a chat as well. And then you've also got to trade off individuals, not trade them off, but you've got to realise within a team you've got your individuals, haven't you? And they've got different needs to what the team needs, but the task still needs doing. And I think this is just quite a useful reflection on the fact that you've got sometimes conflicting priorities, haven't you, really, in all these things that you need to manage. We've also got here, we've got different styles of leadership. So if I print this out, because it's sort of got definitions. I haven't. Right, so I've got them at the bottom of the slide. So if I just open it up, we'll talk through what these are. And again, let's see what you think you are on these. So we've got the notes page. Okay. So sorry. Okay. So in terms of our different styles of leadership, the guy, Daniel Goldman, came up with this. Now, Daniel Goldman came up with the concept, or did a lot of work on it. Someone came up with it beforehand on emotional intelligence. So we've got these different styles. It's based on almost 4,000 executives who were surveyed. So we've got the visionaries that get people to go towards the vision. So it works really well if you get you not in the current economic climate. It works really well. We've got lots of opportunity. Possibly, actually, it worked really well for the previous guy that ran the business, when we've got good things are happening. We're all feeling very motivated. It's great. Coaching is more where we're actually working with them to make sure that they've got our team to give them the best strengths that they need. We're their supporters. We're there sort of nurturing them and growing them. Affiliative is where you do things because you like the manager, probably. So actually it's very team focused. So it's actually people like the rapport in the team. Democratic is where everyone has a voice, so they feel it's quite fair. Again, it works well in a positive climate. Pace setting is where we're saying, look, we want to be the best here. We expect we've taken you on board because we know you've got the skills to get it. That's probably with the apprentice team I work on. We're all sort of experts in our field. We're allowed to manage things and get on with them, and it works well because we all know what we're doing. But actually, if we didn't, it could be disastrous. And then commanding is what you've spoken about, Ashley, that you need to do sometimes where we've got a problem.
Mm.
Were there any of those that resonated with you as you're sort of generally where you're at?
Bit of everything, really.
I think
Depends
that's
on the depends on the situation and the problem or area that you're placed in. But as a bit of everything will come across every day, to be honest.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and you can see, and when I go back to that one, if we go down on these notes at the bottom, you see what I've done. I've cut and paste articles below the notes, so you've got more information if you need it. And it says here, leaders who've managed 4 or more tend to do really well. So they are, as you were saying, Ash, like the authoritative. So when we need to do it, we do it. Democratic, so when we can give people the chance to have a voice, we do. Affiliative, that's where we're building a good team. And the coaching, which is where we're nurturing people to do well and sort of developing them, you tend to do best in those. So yeah, it's quite interesting here in terms of like what characteristics. It's not a one approach fits all, it's this sort of flex between them.
Yeah.
So Bear, was that all right with you? Do you sort of get that?
Yeah. It's a bit like, it depends what kind of people you have in your team, and basing on their attitude and that, you have to adjust to reflect them, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, your style would be different. And actually, if you're a skilled leader, you can do that. You can change your style around. So in your organisation, how would we know what your culture is? What sort of signs are there of your culture? So what components and characteristics, what makes up a culture, and how does that, so how would you describe at Rangemaster the culture?
The culture in terms of what? Production?
No, just the way
many
how things are done around there. What's the organisation like?
From my point of view, is I would say that the organization doesn't quite communicate their vision and their goal. They just try to set an objective and say, let's do it. They don't tell you why we're doing it. And then, basing on that, you have a workforce which is confused and they don't quite know what they're doing. They're uncertain why we're doing it.
Okay.
And it creates a very insecure environment to work.
So you've got uncertainty. Yeah.
I would describe this the culture at the moment.
And there's a blame thing going on at the moment, isn't there, as well? There's some massive gaps in terms of skill set, and then as a consequence, there's blame being apportioned, isn't there?
Yes, absolutely. That's what it is at the moment.
Okay. Ash, what's the culture like? Would you say the characteristics of the culture at maybe more SVO than JLR as a whole? Because you said it's quite different, isn't it?
Yeah, there isn't. There's not a blame.
Sorry. Yeah.
There's not a blame culture at SVO. Quite the opposite. You can't blame people for an issue, even though sometimes people need to be held accountable. It's a bit too soft.
Really?
Yeah, from the world where I'm used to at Solihull, it's like you have to really force the issue upon somebody when they know it's their problem.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. That's quite interesting. So what you're thinking of culture here, we're actually looking at culture in light of how it affects how people manage and lead. So we're talking about, and you could go back to that Goldman thing, with the sort of authoritative and the sort of almost like, or even those, the ones that I was talking about further up, the Kurt, it got a couple of different styles. You could connect this with, because we're looking at how the organisation affects how you can manage people. So when we look at culture, it's as basic as the way we do things. It's almost like it's really difficult to define, but you just know it. It feels very different. So we've heard from Ash that Solihull is very different to SVO. And are you back at Solihull? Not Castle Brom tomorrow, aren't you?
I'm at Castle Brom in the morning, yeah.
And does that feel very different? Does that feel different to Solihull?
You would think there were 3 completely different businesses.
Really? How interesting.
Yeah, Solihull's very strict, deadlines this, etc., etc. So SVO, so we're Coventry, is very sort of laid back, and there's pressure and deadlines, but it's not like Solihull. And then Castle Brom, it's everybody else's problem but theirs.
That's fascinating, isn't
A
it?
completely different cultures here.
It's the same with Rangemaster as well. We have 3 different sites, and our site in Leamington is the main gold mine, we call it. We're the busiest. And the other side in Telford, they are less busy. They produce about only 60 product a week.
Right.
And there's the other side, they press like sinks and that, and they are less volume as well. But, here in Leamington, it's just, 100 miles an hour, whereas the other place is just laid back. They have a
Yeah.
new system of working. They got their own infrastructure as well. But when it comes to like measuring the business performance overall, they are all this is looked at as a group, and this is how they share their commission and that. So they ended getting the same as we do, but we do like more work. So that's how it is.
Well, that's it's so strange, isn't it? That you can be in the same organisation and have such a different experience. If you ever want to look at changing a culture of an organisation, it's ever so difficult. Part of it is because it's so fluffy, this idea of how we do things. But there is a model that this framework here that I'm showing you that constructs how you create a culture. So in it, we've got the stories. So the stories could involve people like, for example, at Morgan Cars. There's a guy who works at Morgan Cars, and he started off as an apprentice and now he runs the business. And that's a really lovely story, because that gives hope that if you work really hard, you get rewarded, you progress. The symbols, again, if I refer to Morgan, they make a lot of cars out of wood, and it's a particular type. I think it might be beech or something. It's got some wood with a little bit of flex in it, but it might be the logos that you got. It might be the green colour for Jaguar Land Rover. Do you know what I mean? So it's sort of everything we see around us that reinforces the brand, really, and the brand experience. It could be certificates for Employee of the Month, or it could be sort of things like that we see around the place that reinforce this sort of excellence that they're going for. Now, the power structures and organisational structures you'd think would be the same, but they're not, which is why they're separate bubbles. So we've got our power structure is actually who really makes the decisions, and they may not even be on the organisational structure. So Ash, when you were talking about the guy being sacked from the board, by the board, wasn't it? The executive board, it might be that there's certain people in the organisation, it might even be the CEO's PA, and actually she's down there in terms of organisational structure. She wouldn't necessarily be high up, but I tell you what, I bet she's got a lot of power and influence. So it's sort of that organisational structure we looked at last week. So it's this idea of your organisational chart and where people sit, whether it's flat, whether it's tall. Control systems are about how we make sure people do what we want them to do. So is it somewhere with a lot of penalties? Is it somewhere with more rewards? So you've got recognition and rewards, or is it and the scale of how severe the penalties are. So actually, is it like I used to when I started my career work at Peugeot, and they were quite soft, really. You had to almost do really, really bad things before you were ever called up for disciplinary or anything. So it's not just the traditional systems, it's how much they actually use them. And then rituals and routines, these are the things that make people want to work somewhere. It's the fantastic Christmas party, it's the Friday morning breakfast run, it's the dress down Friday, it's the whatever it is, it's on people's birthdays that they bring in some sort of food, or when people come back from holiday they do something. It's these sort of little things that make the place feel like it's got its own identity. They can be run by the team, like by the employees, but sometimes they're things that the organisation puts on. But I think if you have those, I know certainly at Cov Uni they've just reduced the budget on those over time. So there used to be we have the equivalent of the town hall. We have staff. They're quite frequent at the moment because things are particularly challenging. that they used to put like coffee and sandwiches on, but over time the sandwiches went, then the coffee went, and it's sort of almost like there was a Christmas, there were Christmas parties. They don't do those anymore. So there's something about those rituals and routines, if they're funded by the organisation and then the organisation starts taking them away, it's really, really damaging. Even though it's a coffee or a you know what I mean, or a sandwich, there's this feeling that the staff feel robbed. You know, that it used to. Isn't it bizarre? Because it's almost so insignificant, but it's a massive sign that people take that actually the organisation doesn't care about them anymore.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, all this is, and then the paradigm is the thing in the middle, and that's the way I describe that. It's like you put a pair of sunglasses on or tinted glasses, and it's how you see the whole organisation. So it's your view of the organisation. So it's that perspective because of all these other elements. So if you want to change your organisational culture, you might change the stories. So you start actually pinpointing some people. So you don't lie, but you develop them, fast track them. So we start getting some positive stories again. We might have a rebrand because actually our quality is not being seen as so good. So we do a massive relaunch of our brand, and that shows people that's quite different. The organisation could be restructured. I mean, that's happening. Coca-Cola are doing that at the moment. They're stripping it from something like 17 business divisions to 9. That's quite a big sign that the culture will change. So if you're going to do stuff, you need to, and I think you're like the blueprint and the customer first at JLR and this sort of that all feeds down then to the control systems, doesn't it? The way that people are rewarded or disciplined will be aligned with your sort of values. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So everything's very congruent, but I like it just because otherwise we're just like stuck in terms of what the hell is culture. But when you start breaking it down, there's fluffy bits, there's bits, and then there's bits that actually we can do stuff with, isn't there?
Yeah, yeah.
Are you both comfortable with that?
Yeah, yep. I am. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, good. That will come up again in your degree, and I think it's quite straightforward. This slide is a little bit difficult to read, but it's basically, so these are different types of organisational culture, and they're based on Greek gods. So we've got one on the role, which is where we're really good at what we do. So we work in finance, we work in engineering, and we're pretty stable in terms of what we're doing. So we're able to just do our jobs really well. So we stay within a function. Obviously, that means we're not particularly agile, but it means we can specialise in what we do. So the roles for quite a steady organisation. A power one is where actually it's very much driven by the leader. So they can quickly make decisions. However, and this would probably be something like my organisation that I like, the one that I run, where I've got a couple of people who do freelance work for me, 3 people who do freelance work. Another way of describing this, you can see it as a spider's web, but it's a wobbly wheel because I'm at the centre of it, and actually it could just fall apart quite easily because you're very, very reliant on one person. So power cultures tend to happen a little bit in family businesses. And if you ever, like I joined a family business recently and thought I would be able to buy into it, you must be joking. That's never going to happen if a family runs a business. You're just going to end up working for their 13-year-old son at some point. So you know, that's something that you have to accept. Task culture. So this is where we bring together, so this is like, you know, the matrix organisation, the matrix structure. We might get cross parties across different areas and we've got a problem, but we're going to fix it together. So we're common purpose around a task. And then a person organisation is one where it tends to be real experts. So it might be a series of a number of architects work together and sort of set up an architectural practice. So it tends to be sort of quite high end, or it might be doctors setting up a private practice, or dentists, for example. So they tend to be very specialist in what they do. What do you think your organisational culture is if we were to pick one of those?
I don't know, really. Bit of both.
It's a hybrid.
It's not straightforward. It's not straightforward in JLR.
No, I don't think it is. When I was saying that, I was like, there's no, because you will have certain functions, probably like finance, probably like IT, and they've got their roles, and actually their thing is probably a role culture. And then in your area, you're sometimes going to have to do a bit of task, because if you've got problems and you're bringing people in, sometimes, yeah, go on.
It's my role where I know what my role is, but it's like you say, sometimes I have to go outside of my role to get something done that will benefit me in my role. And then there's individuals and parts of the business will solely do their job. And if you ask for any support or need any guidance out of their role, they go, not my job.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. Yeah.
But they could do it if they wanted to, but I'm not doing it.
Mindset, isn't it? Okay, that's quite interesting. Super. Do any of these hit home for you? Have you got any of these which you think that's?
I would say in my current job, we do have to go outside our roles as well to get things done. But most of the time, we don't really have a fixed role. Although we work in a specific department, but they expect you to do like a lot of other stuff. Especially now that there's a lot of cutting heads going on, so a lot of these role is not being filled, and we're expecting to do it. So I really don't know where to put myself, really. So
well, it's not clearly defined, is it? It sounds like there's a little bit of a power culture there as well, that you're just expected to do whatever it takes.
Yeah, power, absolutely. Yeah, expected to be done. Yeah, get on with it.
But the task isn't done in a positive way; it's done almost in a negative way, isn't it?
Yeah, bit of that.
Okay. So I know, Ashley, you've got the blueprint, haven't you? Is that right? Is it called the blueprint?
It is at JLR, but 2 seconds, sorry, and I'll be back with you.
Yeah, it's fine. I'll talk to Super and said, Super, I'm just going to shut my window for a sec, 'cause I'm getting a bit chilly.
Cool. I'm going to put a jumper on as well.
Have you got some values at Rangemaster that you could use for the assignment?
Gonna pop the heating on a bit.
Okay.
I'm back.
I'm looking at you again now. Sorry, it's because when I'm presenting, I can't see you and the slides, so I've no idea if anyone's still there or not. But I know at least with the two of you, it's good.
Sorry about that.
No, it's absolutely fine. Have you got so just talking about like the values, just to make sure you've got values in your organisation that you can use. You've got the blueprints, haven't you?
Yes, we have the JLR blueprint, and there is customer principles, customer
first, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. So you've got those that you can talk about that drive the organisation, and they should be driving the leadership style as well, because they should be reinforced throughout.
Yeah.
Zubair, what have you got that you can talk about?
Values of the business, their values.
So have they got them clearly stated, so you're able to access those?
Yes.
Okay. Brilliant. Okay. So you'll be able to refer to those in terms of how that impacts the leadership style. And you know what? Because this is these assignments aren't shown in your organisation. So if you do ever want to be sort of critical of if you feel they're saying one thing and not doing it, that's one thing. But I think you can. It's a sort of opportunity to explore anyway what works and doesn't work. So on culture and values, the things that we can talk about is the handy ones, you know, the 4 that we talked about. But if that doesn't really work, you don't need to. You could use, I think the cultural web is quite helpful to sort of talk about it. Then there's a couple of other things though that I haven't shown you. The cultural dimensions are about how different countries have different cultures. So some countries, for example, or like national cultures, are more bothered about time. So some have a shorter term time orientation, others are more longer term. So you'll have a sort of slight conflict between Japan that might think that good things come to those that wait, you have to be patient, and America wants short-term orientation, has a short-term orientation, wants instant gratification. So that can be quite interesting. But I think for these, the 2 that I've shown you are the 2 that you need to use in these. If you were to, if you're going to use 2 of them, I think just apply what the models that I've shared with you with your work situation, and that would allow you to address that really well. So this is coming back really to something in the next section that we've already talked about, is this idea of flexing your management style or your leadership style depending on what's going on. So you've got your predominant style, but sometimes, so even if, like, I'm more task oriented than I am person oriented, but there are times where you have to shift it, aren't there? Because to support your team in the way that you do, you go out of your comfort zone as well as, you know, to give them what they need. So in terms of our leadership style, this one really is just about we're going to have certain things that we've just got to follow, irrespective of what our style is, depending on the area we're in. Now, do any of those really impact you? Is it going to be?
Not really, no.
No. So you're going to have to be compliant with health and safety, aren't you, really? But actually, the recruitments and things like that are all made at a different level, aren't they?
Yeah.
I don't imagine it will you either, will it, Zubair? Because you're not in any of those functions, really.
No.
Okay, so we'll skip that one. This is the one that really is quite interesting. So this is all you need to talk about in this one. It is very, very similar to that continuum. So the idea is in this one, we've got 4 boxes. 2 of them are sort of high in terms of the task, 2 of them are high in terms of the people. So again, it's just a different model based on what we've already seen. So we've got delegating, where we're really keen to give people the chance.
Anna, sorry, I'm just gonna cut you in. Are you sharing a slide right now? Because I can't see
anything.
No.
Oh, I'm so sorry. It must have gone off. Yes, I'm talking to myself and sharing. Not even looking at you, so I didn't even know. So sorry. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, right. So we've got 4 boxes that are 4 different styles that we can use depending on the situation. And this aligns to that continuum. Do you remember the thing where we were talking about the selling through to consulting? So it's very, very similar. So our telling is where Ashley says to his guys, just got to get it done. You know, no time for questions. By the time you leave today, we've got to do this. So it's high on the task and it's low on relationships. But actually, it's only short-term strategy, isn't it? Just to get stuff done.
Yeah.
And some people, as you say, the ones that just come to work to do their job, that are fairly motivated, but they don't need to know anything else really. The selling is for those people that actually want to know a bit more. So they want to understand, you know, just treat me like a human. Tell me why you're asking me to do what I do. I'd like to see the bigger picture. And it's tricky, isn't it, really? Because we almost want really motivated employees who care about the future of the business. But we don't want them to care to the point that actually they're not doing their job because they're too bothered about telling the business how it should be run. Do you know what I mean? Because no one knows the full picture, really, do they? So selling in box 2 is where we are getting them to do what they need to do, but we're giving them a justification as well. So we're treating them like adults and we sort of put them in the picture. 3, this is where we're getting them to help make things happen. So this is where we've got something where we've got a bit of flexibility over what we're doing. It's not necessarily our most productive time, but it might be where we're brainstorming or we're getting something where we're getting them really involved to change the processes. So we've got, it's good for building the team, but it's not very good for productivity. And then delegating is where they get the chance to do something that they want to do. And we're sort of saying, you know, if you've got any ideas on this, so they're not going to be delivering very much. And you're not intervening too much either. So you're not putting a lot into the relationship, but you're allowing them to do it themselves and develop and create their own sort of way forward. So can you see different situations when you might use different of those boxes?
I can, yeah.
Yeah, Zubair, what about yourself?
Every day I use all four.
That's really good. I think you're going to find, I think actually the problem you're always going to have with this whole course is the time to write the assignment. And I don't think it's motivation, because you might not, at times you might struggle with motivation, but I think it's like when you finally, we're in the course, you can't guarantee what work's going to be like, can you?
No.
And then if you are doing shifts like you're doing tonight, and you haven't even got time to have get enough sleep, really, have you? So the last thing you want to be doing is, well, maybe one day you can be dreaming about this instead. I need to be more directive, don't I? If I did that, I'd get the results, wouldn't I? So maybe it's that. Zubair, are you all right with this?
Yeah, I'm all right with that. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so there are, in terms of this, management leadership styles, how we need to flex them in different situations. It will depend on which area of the business, because actually there will be certain areas of the business that are high risk. So, you know, when I went back and did these slides about adapting your leadership style, it's not going to be, but we might just use that to say in certain areas like HR, they're going to have to be really, really good on GDPR, employment law, etc. But actually then talk about the area you're in, and then talk about like how you change your style. So also in teams that are better established and quite high motivated, we might be able to do more of the delegating and then just get on with it. We don't feel we have to tell them what to do. But in a new team of fairly inexperienced people, we do a lot more telling. So just talk about the factors that would change what you use, but also the business point as well, because actually if you're in a point where you're expanding or you're having to shift numbers out, that will change your style as well. Okay, so I think we're done on this learning outcome, and all this is here. It's different resources that I've put on from Management Direct. So that if you did want to use any of these, I've just listed for each of the learning outcomes which resources you could use. So they're additional fact sheets. And if for any reason, I'm quite good at trying to list them all, but if there's any that's missing, please let me know. But I think this is really, really straightforward. It's just needing an evening or so, a few hours really, to apply it. Are you comfortable with doing it?
I think this one's probably going to be the easiest one for me, because it's pretty much what I do at work, if you know what I mean. Yeah. It's just putting that into context.
And it's using some additional models and language that you wouldn't necessarily use. Okay, Zubair, are you quite comfortable with this?
I will know that when I start doing it, but yeah, I'll give it a go.
Yeah, especially if you're at home and you've got a bit of headspace to do it. I think maybe as well, doing it helps you make sense of why you're not enjoying work.
You know what? Funny you say that, because when I was doing the first bit, I could relate some of the problem to what I was writing, and I was coming up across some, finding facts. So yeah, it's right what you said.
And that's the danger of studying, because sometimes you're not enjoying something, but then you actually understand why you're not enjoying it. And when you understand it, it's never going to change. And when you know that, you're doomed. You've got to either accept it or move on, haven't you? So yeah. I've said to you, so Brenna's sending me bits over as she does them. I'm always willing to help you any way you can. And also, I have got time, like even if it was outside of the evenings, if you do find like you just want to go through your particular examples, do let me know. We'll arrange something that's mutually convenient. Okay.
Yeah.
But I think, I like this one. I think it's a lovely one for Brenna to start on, and I think it's quite a nice one near the end of yours, because it's just not that pressured. You just need a few minutes to write it, don't you, actually?
And what's this about? You're now back on the next year? Jason told me.
What, on the Saturdays?
Yeah, you.
No, I'm not. But just let me stop recording. Right, okay. 3 days before the Saturday started, I got a phone call from Barjan saying, we've got an issue, we haven't got any our hourly paid tutors, we can't keep, basically we can't use any. You've got a contract, could you do this Saturday? And at the moment, so you know my personal circumstances that my marriage presented. So as soon as we're in separate houses, we'll have like 1 week on, 1 week off, or we'll do something like that. But whilst we're here, I've got the children Sunday through to Wednesday morning. So actually I've got Saturdays, so I could do it. So it's like, actually, Barjan, because he said, would you do all of them? I said, I can't, yeah, I will. But their dad is trying to have them 5 days a week. And it's been really horrible. So if I was teaching on Saturdays regularly, he would try and take me to court, so I can't see them.
Yeah. You got to do what's best for you, haven't you?
Yeah, but it isn't even what's best. It's just, you know, when you put in a difficult, an impossible position, someone's just doing it to punish. It's just doing it to be.
Yeah.
That's it. Because he's not happy, so it's just been. But I was like, and actually, if I could do it for the next 6 weeks, I can earn a bit of extra money towards my new home. So it's like, yeah, but yeah, it was I felt really bad because I'd said to everyone, like, I won't be teaching you again, blah blah blah, and then I was like, oh, surprise! And it's like I look like I'm just a massive liar, and I'm totally not. It just so happened that it actually worked, which was nice. And who knows, you know, if I've got any flexibility at home. But it also works because we don't have to go in at the moment, but that's not ideal. I hope by the time you get on it, it's...
I find it easier being actually there at the university than online. I don't know. I don't know why. Even though, you know, it's I think it's brilliant, all the support we get, 100%. Probably get more support now than what we would have actually there, because you've got to put more slides together, I think. But I don't know. I find I'm a learner by doing it and being there.
Yeah, but also in terms of delivering, the thing that's different on a Saturday, just to give you the heads up, at the moment it's lovely because we're such small numbers, we all know each other, like each other, and you know, you switched onto it, you've got like 10 other people in addition to all your guys, and they don't speak, they haven't got their videos on, I don't know what they're thinking, and so you've got like 4 hours of content to go through with no feedback. And it's just like, so I've been trying to rewrite it all as well, make it good, and it's not a very good course. It's not it's just a bit old, that's all. So I've been reworking it and trying to make it better for them because I really want them to have a great experience. And then the students, like, not the CMI guys, they write horrible emails afterwards, and they go like, another CUC disappointment. And you're like, you have got to be kidding. I have done everything I possibly can to do everything I can to support you, and they're rude. Some people are so... You must get this at work and through life, can't you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, but I couldn't imagine emailing like that though about a lesson.
Just like, it was outstanding. And then there's this one, and because I'm friends with a couple of the ladies who finished last year, so they've got their first. I'm going out with them in a few weeks, but I didn't like do anything socially till I'd finished teaching them, because obviously, like, you've just got a conflict of interest. And one of them texted me on the morning and said, tell me you're not teaching this person. And I was like, she said, if you are, you need to ring me. So I rang her, and she's like, she complains about everybody. She complains about all the tutors.